The hearing room was supposed to be about oversight, order, and the careful examination of evidence, but on that spring afternoon the tension inside the chamber rose with every passing minute. Members sat at the long dais, each microphone lined up like soldiers in a row, the C-SPAN cameras catching every angle, and staffers whispering behind stacks of binders. At first it was the usual rhythm of a contentious committee meeting. Witnesses giving long answers, lawmakers cutting them off to make their points, Republicans and Democrats jostling for sound bites they could clip later. But beneath the surface, the atmosphere carried an electricity that only needed the smallest spark to erupt into spectacle. Marjorie Taylor Greene leaned forward, her voice rising above the usual din. She had already interrupted several times, her tone impatient, her eyes darting across the table toward Democratic members who rolled their eyes at her commentary. The friction between Greene and Jasmine Crockett had been simmering for weeks. Crockett, a freshman Democrat from Texas with a sharp wit and little tolerance for what she viewed as political theater, was seated a few chairs away. She had kept her focus on her papers, trying to keep her line of questioning intact. But Greene, never one to pass up an opportunity for confrontation, looked directly at her and let the insult fly. "I think your fake eyelashes are messing up what you're reading." The words cut through the room like a blade. For a half-second there was silence, the kind that follows a sudden crash. Then the murmurs began. Some gasped audibly. Staffers exchanged wide-eyed glances. Across the aisle, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's mouth dropped open in disbelief, her hand immediately slamming the button on her microphone. Chairman James Comer banged his gavel once, his Kentucky drawl pushing through the chaos. "Order. Let's maintain decorum." But the spark had already ignited. The insult wasn't just a stray comment. It was personal, pointed, and delivered in the most public setting possible. Jasmine Crockett raised her head slowly, her expression calm, almost too calm. Her years as a trial lawyer had trained her in keeping composure under fire, and she knew that responding with the right words, at the right moment, would carry more weight than shouting back immediately. She adjusted her glasses, leaned into her microphone, and with measured tone asked, "I'm just curious, Mr. Chairman, if someone on this committee then starts talking about somebody's bleach blonde, bad-built, butch body, that would not be engaging in personalities, correct?" Her phrasing was deliberate. She didn't call Greene by name, but everyone in the room knew exactly who she meant. The reaction was instantaneous. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Some members stifled laughter, others shook their heads in disbelief. Even the court reporter paused for a beat, unsure how to punctuate the moment. Comer's gavel slammed again and again as he called for order, but his voice was drowned out by the rising chorus of, "Oh my God," and, "Did she really just say that?" coming from both sides of the aisle. Greene's face tightened, her jaw clenching as she tried to retort, but her microphone light wasn't on. Crockett sat back in her chair, her point made, her words hanging in the air like smoke after a gunshot. AOC's voice broke through next, her microphone finally catching. "Mr. Chairman, this is unacceptable. We cannot have personal attacks about appearance in this chamber." Her tone carried indignation, but also a recognition that the moment had already spiraled past the usual bounds. Greene snapped back without mic access, her words muffled but her gesturing unmistakable. Staffers shifted uneasily. Cameras panned from one face to another, documenting the collapse of decorum for the public to consume later. On social media, clips of the exchange were already circulating within minutes, captions blazing across timelines. MTG attacks Jasmine Crockett's eyelashes, Crockett claps back with devastating roast. Inside the room, Comer struggled to regain authority. "The members will suspend. The members will suspend. We are here for oversight, not insults." But his gavel bangs sounded more like background percussion than real enforcement. Greene finally caught the chairman's eye and demanded her microphone be turned on. When it lit red, she leaned in and yelled, her voice cracking into a scream. "She just called me a bad-built butch body. That is completely inappropriate." Her voice echoed across the chamber, drawing another wave of gasps. Some Republicans muttered in agreement, while Democrats smirked or shook their heads. The hearing no longer resembled legislative inquiry, it had transformed into a live-action shouting match more akin to daytime television drama. Crockett, however, didn't flinch. She waited until Greene had finished, then calmly leaned forward again. "Mr. Chairman, I was making an inquiry. I asked whether that would be considered engaging in personalities, since my colleague decided to comment on my eyelashes. If we are going to uphold standards, let us uphold them equally." The precision of her words underscored the absurdity of the entire scene. She had turned Greene's insult into a rhetorical weapon, exposing the hypocrisy of selective outrage. Some Democrats clapped their hands softly against the table in support, while Comer snapped at them to stop applauding. The room descended into overlapping voices, Greene yelling, Crockett responding with measured calm, AOC trying to raise a point of order, Comer pounding away with his gavel. Members who had been silent until then looked away in embarrassment, as though distancing themselves from the circus playing out in front of them. Witnesses at the table shifted in their chairs, clearly aware that their testimony had become background noise to the main event. Even the stenographer's fingers flew faster, knowing that history was being made in a way no one had planned. As the shouting dragged on, the audience in the gallery leaned forward, captivated. Some stifled laughter behind their hands, others shook their heads in dismay. The clash had become more than a quarrel between two congresswomen, it was a reflection of the bitter polarization that defined the entire chamber. Greene, red-faced and gesturing wildly, embodied the combative style that thrived on confrontation. Crockett, sharp-tongued but unflappable, represented a new generation of lawmakers unwilling to let insults slide unanswered. Their collision was bound to happen, it was only a matter of when and where. When Comer finally managed to quiet the room, the damage was already done. The clip would dominate news cycles, late-night comedy, and social media feeds. Commentators would argue about whether Crockett's clapback was appropriate or whether Greene had crossed the line first. Supporters of Greene would frame her as the victim of a cruel insult, while Crockett's defenders would hail her as a master of composure who had given Greene a taste of her own medicine. The nuances of committee procedure, the substance of the hearing, and the witness testimony all evaporated under the weight of a single exchange about eyelashes and body types. Later, Greene would double down, appearing on friendly media outlets to insist that she had been unfairly attacked, even going so far as to call Crockett's remark hilarious, in an attempt to spin the embarrassment. Crockett, meanwhile, leaned into the viral fame, using the moment to highlight double standards and to remind her supporters that black women in politics are often targeted with personal jabs meant to undermine their credibility. Merchandise appeared online almost overnight, quoting her, bleach blonde, bad built, butch body, line on mugs and t-shirts. Memes flooded Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. The incident had transcended politics, it had become pop culture. Back in the chamber, though, as order was finally restored and the hearing trudged forward, the energy remained heavy. Members knew that what they had just witnessed would follow them for weeks. Some whispered among themselves, shaking their heads in disbelief that the institution could sink so easily into chaos. Others smirked quietly, recognizing that the spectacle would give them ammunition for fundraising emails and campaign ads. Crockett sat composed, jotting notes, her face giving away little. Greene stared ahead, still seething, her fingers drumming against the desk. Comer sighed audibly, muttering about the lack of respect for the process, but his authority had already been undermined. The rest of the session proceeded with a strange hollowness. Witnesses resumed their answers, but few were truly listening. The gallery, still buzzing with whispered conversations, seemed more interested in replaying what had just happened than absorbing the technicalities of oversight. By the time Comer gavelled the hearing to a close, it was clear that the true story of the day had nothing to do with the agenda items. It had everything to do with a clash of personalities, an eruption of tempers, and a devastating retort that would echo far beyond the walls of the Capitol. When reporters swarmed the hallways afterward, they clustered around both women. Greene repeated her outrage, accusing Democrats of degrading discourse. Crockett stood firm, repeating that she had only asked a procedural question, one sparked by Greene's own insult. Her words were clipped, her tone steady, the same composure she had displayed inside. Around them, cameras flashed, microphones jostled, and staffers tried to push through the crowd. Within hours, every major outlet ran headlines framing the confrontation as the latest symbol of dysfunction in Congress. Yet for those who had been inside the room, the memory was sharper than the headlines could capture. The sharp sting of Greene's words, the collective gasp at Crockett's response, the thunder of the chairman's gavel, the chorus of overlapping voices, it all felt like a surreal blend of political theater and raw human conflict. Some left shaking their heads at the degradation of civility. Others left with a sense of satisfaction that power could be challenged with wit and precision. But no one left forgetting what they had seen. The hearing that should have been remembered for its policy debates instead became immortalized as the day when a congresswoman's insult about eyelashes led to one of the most viral clapbacks in congressional history. And as the footage spread across televisions, smartphones, and dinner table conversations across America, it became clear that the scene would not just be a moment of fleeting drama, but but a lasting snapshot of an era where politics, entertainment, and personal feuds collided in the most public of arenas.